So picture the closing seconds of Super Bowl XLAX.
Oh, man. I already know where this is going.
Right. It's legendary. The Seattle Seahawks are trailing the New England Patriots by 4 points. There's like 26 seconds left on the clock.
Barely any time at all.
Exactly. And the Seahawks are sitting right on the Patriots' 1 yard line. I mean, the entire world is watching this. Everyone from the commentators in the booth to, the fans in the cheap seats is expecting Coach Pete Carroll to just hand the ball off to Marshawn Lynch.
Which makes total sense because he's this legendary power back, and you literally just need one single yard to win the championship.
Yeah, it's a scenario where the collective assumption of what should happen is it's completely overwhelming.
Right. It feels like a done deal.
And then Carroll completely defies that assumption. He calls a pass play.
A pass play on the 1 yard line.
Yep. Russell Wilson drops back. He throws this quick slant, and it's intercepted by Malcolm Butler. The Patriots win.
Just a crushing moment for Seattle.
Totally crushing. And the next morning, the media response is historic. I mean, headlines everywhere are calling it the worst play call in NFL history. Pundits are acting like Pete Carroll didn't just lose a football game, but like he fundamentally forgot how football even works.
They crucified him.
He really did. But welcome to the deep dive, because today our mission is to examine that exact reaction. We are going to untack the illusion of certainty in our decision-making.
It's such a crucial topic for anyone trying to navigate an unpredictable world.
Exactly. And we're doing this using the insights from Annie Duke's book, Thinking in Bets. Now, if you aren't familiar with her, Duke actually left a National Science Foundation fellowship in cognitive psychology to become a champion professional poker player for 20 years.
Which is quite the career pivot.
Right. But her work brilliantly exposes why our brains are so biologically ill-equipped to judge how we make choices.
Yeah, and the reaction to that Super Bowl play perfectly illustrates this psychological fallacy that she calls resulting.
Resulting. Okay, let's unpack this. What exactly is that?
So resulting is basically our tendency to equate the quality of a decision entirely with the quality of its outcome.
Meaning, if it ends badly, we assume the choice was bad.
Exactly. We look at the interception and just automatically assume the decision that led to it was inherently flawed. But, if you strip away the emotion and just look at the math, calling a pass from the 1 yard line was actually an incredibly sound strategy.
Wait, really? Because it felt so reckless at the time.
I know, but look at the stats. Out of 66 passes attempted from an opponent's 1 yard line during that specific NFL season, 0 had been intercepted.
0. Wow. Out of 66.
Literally 0. And if you look over the previous 15 years, the interception rate in that exact scenario hovered around 2%.
Okay, so Carroll is looking at a play that is like 98% safe.
Exactly. He's playing the odds. And by passing on second down, Carroll actually preserved his final timeout.
Oh, right, because an incomplete pass stops the clock.
Yes. If the pass is incomplete, the clock stops, giving him 2 more chances to either run or pass. So he maximized his mathematical chances of scoring. He made a logical, probability-based decision. He just happened to catch that incredibly unlikely 2% variance.
So he didn't make a bad choice, he just got a bad result.
Precisely.
Man, it's wild how hard it is to separate those two things in our minds. I mean, to understand why we judge Pete Carroll, and honestly why we judge ourselves so relentlessly, we have to look at how we misunderstand the fundamental nature of the situations we navigate every day.
We really do. We treat life like it's a game of chess when we really, really should be treating it like poker.
Yeah, the chess versus poker analogy. This brings us to John von Neumann, right?
Yes, the mathematician who essentially invented game theory while he was working on the Manhattan Project.
Casual resume builder there.
Right. But he had this profound realization about this. Someone asked him about the theory of games, assuming he meant games like chess. And von Neumann argued that chess isn't actually a game at all.
It's not a game.
No, he said it's a well-defined computation. There's no hidden information on a chessboard. Both players can see every single piece. There are no dice rolls, no lucky draws. If you lose at chess, it is strictly because there was a superior move that you just failed to calculate.
It's entirely on you.
Exactly. But poker is entirely different. Poker is a game of incomplete information. You don't know your opponent's cards, and the turn of the deck introduces uncontrollable luck. Von Neumann pointed out that real life is poker, not chess.
If you apply that to something we all do, like driving, It clicks instantly.
Oh, the driving analogy is perfect.
Yeah, like if life were chess, running a red light would automatically result in a car crash every single time because the rules would dictate a guaranteed outcome.
Cause and effect 1-to-1.
Right. But because life is poker, a person could say, drive drunk, run a red light, and actually make it home safely to their driveway. The fact that they survived doesn't mean they made a brilliant tactical decision.
Not at all.
And it definitely doesn't make them an elite driver. The hidden variables, like the absence of other cars at that exact intersection at that exact second, they just broke in their favor.
Just dumb luck.
Yeah.
And our inability to accept those hidden variables, it really comes down to our evolutionary biology. Our brains evolved on the savannah to seek order and certainty.
Because it kept us alive.
Exactly. It was a survival mechanism. If our ancestors heard a rustle in the tall grass, the ones who assumed it was a lion and ran away, well, they survived. The brain is wired to find cause and effect connections really quickly, even if they're false.
Better safe than sorry.
Right. So today, in modern society, we constantly try to force the chaotic, unpredictable poker game of life to look like a neat, orderly chessboard.
I want a direct line from A to B, and when we don't get it, we panic. We pound square pegs into round holes.
We do. And it leads to horrific evaluations. The source text details this corporate example it's almost tragic, honestly. A CEO fired his company president.
Okay, happens all the time.
Sure, but it wasn't a rash move. The CEO went through this highly logical, months-long process. They analyzed competitors, they provided executive coaching, mapped out the transition, evaluated all the alternatives. I mean, the decision was structurally sound.
Sounds like he did everything right.
He did. But the aftermath was a mess. The search for a replacement dragged on, employee morale dipped, and sales fell. And because the outcome was painful, the CEO experienced this immense anguish and decided his initial choice to fire the president was a colossal mistake.
So he just abandoned all that logic.
Completely disregarded his own rigorous logic solely because the immediate result was negative.
It reminds me of the battle of wits in The Princess Bride.
Oh, Vizzini, yes.
Right. You have Vizzini staring at 2 goblets of wine, trying to deduce which one has the poison, and he goes through this dizzying, completely arrogant logical loop, assuming he can compute the answer like a chess grandmaster.
He thinks he's outsmarting the system.
Exactly. He thinks he has all the variables. He completely fails to realize he's dealing with hidden information. The fact that both cups are poisoned.
Spoiler alert for a 30-year-old movie.
True. But he ends up dead because he demanded certainty in a scenario that didn't offer any.
Vizzini's trap is universal, though. We all assume we have all the facts. And if life is a game of poker filled with hidden information, then every single choice you make, whether it's firing a CEO, calling a pass in the Super Bowl, or, deciding whether to move to a new city, is essentially a bet.
Right.
And those bets are entirely reliant on your beliefs.
But when we talk about making a bet, we usually think of 2 people putting money on a poker table. In life, most of these bets aren't against other people. They're against alternative versions of ourselves, aren't they?
That is a crucial distinction. Every time you make a decision, you are basically betting against all the other futures you could have chosen. Every choice has an opportunity cost.
Like the Johnny World story.
Yes. There's this fascinating story in the sources about a legendary gambler named John Hennigan, known as Johnny World. He was entirely adapted to the Las Vegas lifestyle. He slept all day, played poker all night, practically lived in the casinos.
The ultimate Vegas guy.
Right. And he ends up making a bet with his poker network for $30,000 that he could move to a quiet residential street in Des Moines, Iowa, and stay there for a month.
So Johnny is evaluating 2 futures, one where he stays in his comfortable Vegas routine, and one where he adapts to small-town domesticity for a nice payout.
Right. He takes the bet and he moves to Des Moines. 2 days later.
2 days.
Just 2 days. He hates the quiet, mundane reality of it so much that he calls his friends and offers to pay them $15,000 just to buy his way out of the bet.
Wow, he lasted 48 hours.
Yep. He bet on a future version of himself, successfully adjusting to that environment, and he completely misjudged his own capacity to do so. He bet on a future version of himself and lost.
It really makes you wonder, if we don't even know what our future selves want or can tolerate, how can we possibly trust the foundational beliefs driving these bets?
That is the core issue. And according to research by Harvard psychologist Dan Gilbert, our belief systems are remarkably fragile. We generally assume that belief formation is this rigorous 3-step process.
Like a vetting process.
Exactly. First, we hear a piece of information. Second, we think about it, analyze it, and vet it for truth. And third, once it passes the test, we form a belief. But Gilbert's research demonstrates that neurologically, the process operates in a much, much different order.
Here's where it gets really interesting. How so?
Well, the brain is a highly efficient organ that really wants to conserve energy. Comprehending an idea and believing it are processed by the brain as the exact same operation.
Wait, really?
Yeah, so the actual sequence is, one, we hear something. Two, we automatically believe it to be true just by processing the words. And three, only later, if we have the time, energy, and inclination, do we expend the cognitive effort to vet it and potentially unbelieve it.
So the default state of the human brain is basically gullibility. We just absorb information as truth because it takes too many calories to be skeptical up front.
Precisely. Vetting creates cognitive friction, and our brains are hardwired to avoid friction.
I'm struggling with this, though. If you have an audience of highly educated, analytical people listening right now, you'd assume their brains are better trained to overcome that friction, right?
Right.
Doesn't high intelligence or advanced education provide a defense mechanism against this automatic belief formation?
You would hope so, but the data suggests the exact opposite. Being smart actually makes it worse.
Worse, how?
Intelligence often exacerbates the problem due to something called the blind spot bias, which is our inability to recognize our own cognitive distortions. Researchers conducted a numeracy study to test this. They gave participants complex data sets to analyze. First, they used a completely neutral topic, a new skin rash cream.
Okay, totally boring, no emotional stakes.
Right. And as you would expect, the participants with higher mathematical aptitude did a significantly better job interpreting the data accurately.
Right, the math skills worked exactly the way they're supposed to.
But then, the researchers took the exact same numerical data and just swapped the labels. Instead of skin cream, the data was framed around gun control and crime rates.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They chose a highly polarizing topic specifically to see how emotional investment alters mathematical processing.
So the math is identical, just the context changed.
Exactly identical. And when the topic became emotionally charged, the highly numerate subjects actually made more mistakes in interpreting the data if it conflicted with their pre-existing political beliefs.
That is wild.
They didn't use their advanced math skills to uncover the objective truth. They subconsciously weaponized their intelligence to spin the numbers and construct elaborate rationalizations that protected their existing worldview.
So a higher IQ just makes you better at lying to yourself. You build stronger armor around your flawed beliefs.
It's called motivated reasoning. We see this in the classic They Saw a Game psychology study from the 1950s, too. Students from Princeton and Dartmouth watched the exact same film of a highly contentious, rough football game between their two schools.
Same exact footage.
Same footage. But when asked to count infractions, the Princeton students saw Dartmouth commit twice as many flagrant penalties. The Dartmouth students saw an equal number of infractions on both sides. Their tribal loyalties fundamentally warped their visual processing of a recorded event.
But if our beliefs are this compromised and our brains actively use our intelligence to defend our biases, how do we ever learn anything from the choices we make? We obviously do adapt and grow, so some feedback must be getting through. Right.
We do learn, but the mechanism relies on how we field the outcomes of our choices. Think of an outfielder catching a baseball and deciding where to throw it. When an outcome occurs in your life, you have to field it into one of two buckets. There is the skill bucket, which means your decision directly caused the outcome, and there is the luck bucket, which means the outcome was driven by variables out of your control.
And given everything we've just discussed about the brain protecting itself, I'm guessing we don't distribute things into those buckets objectively.
Not even close. We operate under a massive self-serving bias. Our ego distorts this fielding process entirely. We are desperate to take credit for our successes, so we instinctively toss all our wins straight into the skill bucket. We tell ourselves, I made a brilliant calculation.
Of course we do.
But when we fail, the ego steps in to protect us, and we throw those failures directly into the luck bucket. We tell ourselves the market shifted or the timing was off or, it just wasn't our fault.
The text mentions auto insurance claims that highlight this perfectly, right?
They are staggering to read. Drivers will submit official written claims blaming stationary objects for their accidents.
It's stationary objects.
Yes, they will write things like, an invisible car came out of nowhere, struck my vehicle, and vanished.
Or you look at professional poker champion Phil Hellmuth, who famously stated on national television, if it weren't for luck, I'd win everyone.
He is literally claiming that if life were a chessboard, he would have a 100% win rate.
Exactly.
But what's really fascinating is how we view other people's outcomes. We experience schadenfreude, right? We completely reverse the buckets when we judge someone else.
We do. When a rival succeeds, we attribute it to dumb luck. When they fail, we assign it entirely to their lack of skill. The most brutal example of this is the Steve Bartman incident.
Oh, the poor guy.
Right. During the 2003 playoffs, the Chicago Cubs were incredibly close to reaching the World Series. A foul ball drifted toward the stands. Steve Bartman, just a regular fan, reached out and deflected the ball away from the Cubs left fielder. The Cubs subsequently collapsed and lost the game. And the city of Chicago essentially ruined this man's life.
The fans and the media placed the entirety of the blame on Bartman's choice to reach for the ball. They fielded his outcome entirely into the skill bucket, judging him as the sole architect of the disaster. In doing so, they completely ignored the profound bad luck that dictated the trajectory of the ball and Bartman's specific seat assignment.
He was just sitting where his ticket said to sit.
Right. And more importantly, they completely ignored the actual fielding error made by the Cubs' professional shortstop, Alex Gonzalez, just moments later, which was the real mathematical catalyst for the loss. We demand that others take full responsibility for bad outcomes, while we excuse our own.
Hang on, though. What about scenarios where the feedback is immediate and punishing? The sources bring up a guy named Nick the Greek, who played poker with this terrible strategy of always betting on a 7 and a 2, which are statistically awful cards, because he thought the element of surprise would win.
It's a terrible strategy.
Right. And he lost constantly, went completely broke, and was deported. At some point, doesn't the pain of losing all your money force you to learn? You can't just ignore an empty bank account.
It seems like severe consequences should shatter the illusion, sure, but it comes down to the pacing of the feedback. Humans process feedback very similarly to rats on a variable reinforcement schedule.
Like a slot machine.
Exactly like a slot machine. If you put a rat in a cage and it gets a food pellet, every single time it presses a lever, it learns the direct correlation. If you cut off the food entirely, the rat stops pressing the lever immediately. The skill bucket is clear.
Because it's a guaranteed one-to-one relationship.
Exactly. But if you give that rat a pellet on a random variable schedule, the rat will continue to press the lever thousands of times after the food stops completely. It holds out hope that the very next press will be the lucky one. Because life's outcomes are a mix of skill and luck, we get rewarded for bad decisions just often enough to sustain our delusions.
That makes perfect sense when you consider ambiguous feedback loops, like the Snackwell's cookies craze in the 1990s.
Oh, the fat-free craze.
Right. Everyone thought dietary fat was the sole cause of weight gain, so people started eating entire boxes of fat-free Snackwell's cookies. What they didn't realize was that the fat had been replaced with massive amounts of sugar.
Which causes weight gain.
Exactly. People are gaining weight, but the biological feedback loop of human weight gain is incredibly slow and ambiguous. You step on the scale and wonder, is it the cookies? Is it stress? Is my metabolism slowing down? Because the feedback wasn't immediate, the ambiguity allowed their egos to just keep deceiving them. They could keep eating the cookies without ever admitting their core belief about fat was wrong.
That ambiguity is the lifeblood of the self-serving bias.
Yeah.
And because we cannot fundamentally rewire the biological hardware of our brains to fix this, we have to engineer a workaround for our routines. Think of the Miller-Lire optical illusion.
Remind me which one that is.
That's the classic image of two horizontal lines of equal length. One line has arrows pointing outward at the ends, and the other has arrows pointing inward. When you look at it, your visual cortex screams that one line is longer than the other. You cannot simply willpower your way into unseeing the illusion.
Right, your brain just processes it wrong no matter how hard you stare at it. But you can pull out a ruler, measure the lines, and prove to your brain that they are identical.
Exactly. We can't change the hardware, but we can use a tool. And in decision-making, our ruler is the practice of replacing absolute certainty with percentages. Instead of declaring a belief as a 100% absolute fact, you assign it a probability.
So instead of saying Citizen Kane won Best Picture, you recalibrate and say, I am 60% sure Citizen Kane won Best Picture.
Yes, and doing that achieves two things. First, it protects your ego. If someone informs you that How Green Was My Valley actually won the award, you don't suffer the psychological crash of going from completely right to completely wrong. You just update your mental probability.
It doesn't hurt as much to be 40% wrong.
Right. And second, it fundamentally changes how others interact with you. It invites them to share contrary information collaboratively, rather than feeling like they have to aggressively tear down your absolute statement.
It naturally leads to the Chester phrase mentioned in the text, wanna bet. Because if you boldly state something as a fact and someone looks at you and says, wanna bet,
Mm.
your entire physiological posture changes.
It really does. You freeze.
You stop being defensive and suddenly become investigative. You check your certainty. You step back and ask yourself, wait, what do they know that I don't?
It forces you to pause the automatic belief mechanism we discussed earlier and actually initiate the vetting process. But, and this is important, you can't cultivate this mindset in isolation. You need a dedicated social contract. You need a buddy system designed for truth-seeking.
Because if you just walk up to people in normal conversation and challenge their beliefs, it backfires completely. Like the sources highlight that painful interview between David Letterman and Lauren Conrad.
Oh, that was so uncomfortable to watch.
Right. She's on his show, complaining about all the interpersonal drama in her life, framing herself as a constant victim of bad luck, and Letterman leans in and says, maybe you're the problem, do you think?
It was incredibly abrasive because they had no pre-existing social contract for that level of truth-seeking. She immediately shut down and got super defensive.
Yeah, to make this work, it's almost like you need to build an ego gym. Going to the gym physically hurts, you break down muscle, you get sore, but you do it for the long-term benefit. Truth-seeking is the same way. You need a pod of people, like an AA group for decision-making, who have explicitly agreed to endure that discomfort with you. You have to shift the reward loop.
That's a great way to frame it. Instead of seeking a dopamine hit from taking credit for a victory, you train yourself to get that dopamine hit from peer approval when you accurately identify a mistake you made while winning. That is what elite decision makers do. Look at Phil Ivey.
The poker player.
Yeah, widely considered one of the greatest poker players in history. He would win massive, multi-million-dollar tournaments and then spend his celebratory dinners obsessively deconstructing the minor tactical mistakes he made along the way with other professionals.
Wow. He was utilizing his truth-seeking pod.
Exactly.
If you think about it, you have a choice. Take the blue pill, stay in the comfortable matrix where every failure is bad luck and you're always right. Or take the red pill, join a truth-seeking group, embrace accountability, and see the world as it actually is. It's exactly what happened with Ira the whale.
Right, the gambler who claimed he could eat 100 White Castle burgers in a single sitting.
Yes. If he had just said that at a normal party, everyone would have rolled their eyes. But because he was in a truth-seeking group of professional bettors, they held him accountable. They bet thousands of dollars against him. He was forced to physically prove his certainty.
And they actually did it, by the way.
Ordered 20 more to go.
Yeah.
But the mechanism of accountability is what matters there.
And crucially, the spotters in your ego gym must offer a diversity of viewpoints. If everyone in your pod shares your exact background and beliefs, you aren't truth-seeking. You're just building an echo chamber that reinforces your blind spots. Institutions have recognized this necessity. The U.S. State Department created the dissent channel specifically for this reason.
To force that friction.
Yes, used across multiple administrations to debate everything from the war in Bosnia to Syria to immigration policies. It allows Foreign Service employees to officially register opposing viewpoints directly with senior leadership without fear of retaliation. They realize that institutionalizing exploratory thought is the only way to break confirmatory groupthink.
So, what does this all mean? We've covered incredible ground today. Just to briefly recap, life is messy. It's a game of poker, dictated by hidden information and luck. Our choices are bets against our future selves, built on flawed beliefs that our brains automatically accept without vetting. Our egos completely distort how we field our outcomes, claiming all the wins and blaming the universe for the losses. But by embracing probabilities, using triggers like wanna bet to pause our certainty, and building a diverse network to hold us accountable, we can slowly start compounding small improvements into massive life advantages.
It's powerful stuff. And to leave you with a final thought on just how pervasive this challenge really is, consider the federal appeals judges analyzed in the text.
Okay.
These are individuals who represent the absolute pinnacle of analytical reasoning. They are highly educated, rigorously vetted, and sworn to absolute impartiality. They are even granted life tenure specifically to insulate them from political or financial consequences, supposedly allowing them to make decisions based purely on objective logic.
The ultimate chess players in theory.
In theory. Yet an analysis of tens of thousands of their rulings revealed that they still routinely vote along their own inherent political lines. If the highest, most protected, most intellectually trained legal minds in the country cannot escape the invisible gravity of their own unvetted beliefs and biases, it raises a vital question for all of us. How much of your own strictly objective professional work is secretly being driven by the invisible hand of your own ego?
That is something to mull over. When we look at Pete Carroll's interception, we think we see a simple story of a bad choice. But reality is never that clean. The next time you find yourself absolutely convinced you made a flawless decision, or entirely certain your failure was just a streak of bad luck, take a breath, look at your certainty, and ask yourself, want to bet? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. See you next time.